I've always really enjoyed horror movies. I love The Thing. I love the Child's Play movies. I love the Halloween films. Alien is a classic. I've really always enjoyed these types of movies. And the older I've gotten, the more I've appreciated them even more. And I like when these movies kind of become part of pop culture. And I want to talk a little bit about that in my review for this movie, which is called Talk to Me, and let's discuss. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Before we get started, click on that red subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you know whenever I post a new piece of content. Okay, so Talk to Me is a 2023 Australian horror film about possession and of course, like any great horror film, it's about a lot of other things as well. It's about like what's going to make you uncomfortable. Ultimately, horror movies succeed at their best when they're making you uncomfortable. I think it was 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago when I reviewed The Invisible Man. Movie made me uncomfortable the entire time, and that was great. I loved it. The most revolutionary horror movies that we've had have always had something about them that makes you uncomfortable, like unsettled. That's the best type of horror movie. Jaws. It made people at the time when it was released not want to go to the beach. Not only that, but it completely created an entire new type of way to watch movies, which is the blockbuster. When Jaws came out, people weren't going to see movies in the summer. That's where movies went to die. Jaws changed everything. It's an exercise in tension and the fantastic use of music, and it's just Spielberg at his best. Jaws is tremendous. The Exorcist, when it came out, the grossness and the intensity and the nastiness of that movie is one thing, but seeing a small child become possessed and essentially tormented for 2 hours is ultimately what that made that movie fantastic, and it made people uncomfortable as a result. Rosemary's Baby, a movie I hadn't seen until about 2-3 years ago in its full, and that movie's tremendous. The idea of pregnancy becoming this horrific burden on somebody, and it's just a great movie. A movie that I talk about and think about a lot, Bone Tomahawk, which I think came out in 2015. Definitely the most, maybe not most uncomfortable. It has the most horrific scene I've ever seen in any movie, and that movie is fantastic, and I'll probably never go see it again, but that movie made me uncomfortable. It's a horror Western. If you haven't seen it, it's dynamite. It's also got, it's going to make your stomach turn, but I highly recommend. Alien, no one in space, no one can hear you scream. What a great tagline. The idea of being isolated, alone in space with this terrifying creature. Great stuff too. So ultimately, like, you're in an uphill battle whenever you make a horror movie, right? Because you're up against all of these tropes. The babysitter running upstairs instead of running out the front door and running down the road screaming forever to escape the killer. The completely unstoppable killing machine that is a Jason, that is a Michael Myers, a Leatherface. These things, you have a lot stacked against you. And Talk to Me gets so much right. I would describe it as a psychological horror film that, and kind of a deeply emotional one that really digs into a lot of hard issues like grief and suicide and dealing with your own emotional baggage. This movie hits on a lot of those themes, and basically here's what it's about. A group of teens in Australia, present day, they have this embalmed hand that is used to summon spirits. And so they summon the spirit, they say, talk to me, and then they give the spirit permission to enter them and take over their bodies, and the spirit like uses them to talk and share thoughts, and it gives the teens like this really weird and kind of messed up high. And then of course things go desperately wrong, because if you have the spirit inside you for longer than 90 seconds, it completely takes over and you're screwed. So of course everything goes very, very south and very, very wrong. And the movie has a decent number of jump scares, but how it treats the audience and how the movie looks and how the movie feels and the dialogue, it's all kind of perfect. This is a really, really great horror film. It's got a banger of an ending that's not like completely out of control and something like Hunter x Hunter, but it is like deeply moving and emotional at its core, which is what makes the movie work and what makes it tick. And what I respect about this film too is that it plays it dead serious. You could easily make a movie like this and have, the cringy teenage dialogue, and this movie just doesn't do that. Yeah, they talk like teens in certain moments, but it's not about it's not a horror comedy. When I reviewed Bodies, 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 that's a movie that like tries to also be like super cool and hip and funny at the same time. And the fact that this movie just is like completely straight laced and doesn't like try and have a sense of humor is what ultimately makes it successful. And it's going to get a sequel. This movie's great, really pleasantly surprised, and it makes you tick in all the right ways. It gets you in all the right ways. A couple years ago when I watched Hereditary for the first time, I had to turn that movie off. There's a moment, I have two sisters, and there's a moment, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. There's a moment in that movie where I had to turn it off and go to bed and watch the rest of it the next day. That's how uncomfortable it made me. And I know that's a fantastic movie, and when I watch it, it's great, and I can get through it now in one sitting. But it also like is deeply unsettling, and I think like any great horror movie, Talk to Me does that well. Another thing, like another movie I should have mentioned in the beginning is Midsommar, a movie that has all of its horror is drenched in sunlight, and all of it happens out in the open in the day. There is like a couple scenes in darkness, but all of it's just out in the open and directly there for you to see. And I think movies that are willing to take chances and do something different are ultimately successful. It's what I love about a movie like Cabin in the Woods too. You're willing to take chances and take pot shots at and that movie was successful because it took chances, but it also took pot shots at the genre, which is something that Talk to Me doesn't really do. But yeah, I love this movie. Can't wait to watch it again, and really enjoyed it. So if you like this video, found it helpful, I hope you consider subscribing. You can also like and share it. That tells the powers that be it's worth promoting. And hit me in with the comments. Let me know what you think of Talk to Me, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m.